This episode of the Media Leader podcast was edited by our production partner, Trisonic. For a full range of audio, media buying, and creative services, including podcast production, check out trisonic.co.uk.
Responsible is an imperative being fit for the future because it just pulls you away from maybe the bad practices that help today, but forget might not work tomorrow.
Welcome to the Media Leader podcast. I'm Jack Benjamin. The new year always brings with it the inclination to not just future gaze, but to consider how to future-proof. And one media agency that has always billed itself as a future-first organization is Omnicom's Hearts and Science. Garrett O'Reilly has been CEO of Hearts and Science for nearly 3 years, and at Hearts and Science in other executive roles for a total of 8 years. As CEO, O'Reilly outlined a growth strategy that, in 2023, led to significant account wins like Jaguar and Allwyn. I wanted to sit down with O'Reilly to discuss Hearts and Science's current growth plan, how he views the current agency landscape, which is definitely changing, and why he believes the future of media includes the need for responsible investment. This is that conversation. I hope you enjoy. Garrett O'Reilly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
I'd like to start off with a question that I always try to ask of any media leaders that come on the podcast, which is how and why did you get into the industry in the first place?
I'm sorry to say I probably won't tell a story that's any more kind of interesting or exciting of many of the other stories that you've heard on this before. Insofar as I kind of fell into it, I didn't really know what media was before I started doing the job. And my tenuous connection is that I studied zoology at university, and particularly behavioral zoology. So, I mean, that's a really tenuous link to it. It's sort of fundamentally around, when you strip it all back, it's about understanding how and why animals do what they do and people do what they do. So, but I mean, that's really grasping. I kind of fell into it, if I'm really honest.
If you have anything zoological that is interesting, that would be really fascinating to understand how that applies to your job.
Okay, I'll think about that as I go. We did a lot of stuff. It tended to be stuff like mollusks and things, so it's not that applicable.
Okay,
if I'm brutally honest.
Mollusks.
We'll see. I'll do my best.
Mollusks advertising, bit different.
Yeah.
You became CEO of Hearts and Science in February 2002, so we're actually almost at 3 years since you became CEO. And I'm curious, just reflecting back on when you first started in that role, the growth plan that I'm sure you developed at the time, how have you looked to define success in the years afterward?
Yeah, but back in 2022, so I've been doing it, for kind of 3 years now. And I think if I think about it, like the UK, as you know, is a really incredibly competitive category. I'm sure all your listeners are aware of that as well. So the number one challenge when I kind of came into the role was how do Hearts compete and with the best in the industry, but also kind of cut through and win against them. So that was obviously, for any agency, that's kind of the key challenge. But then I think the second challenge that I kind of faced, particularly in Hearts faced particularly, was that we had a kind of rapid and quite ambitious growth plan that we put in place. And actually, how do we get to that? How do we implement that plan in a relatively short space of time that allows us to grow, but in a way that keeps us true to our mission? And why, all the things that drive the growth is also going to kind of attract the right talent and attract the right clients that want to work with us. So I think in those two challenges, having a really clear definition of why we exist in the first place and what makes us different to the competition, and making sure that we stay close to that was the kind of antidote. That was really, really front and center in those early days to go, that we have to stay true to this when I was in that role. And I think what I was really lucky to get as a part of the Hearts team was in the part of the team that started Hearts, and then obviously the CEO in the last sort of 3 years, is kind of Hearts' mission has always been the same from day one, and it's still true today. And it's all, we talk about being fit for the future, and that sort of fit for the future mindset, if you like, or that mission is applied to kind of everything that we do. So it's everything from the agency and the work that we do, embracing new ideas and data and technology, but also fit for the future is applied to our talent. So how do we upskill our teams in the right way with skills that are going to future-proof their careers and embracing emerging platforms, and obviously future-proofing our clients, i.e. not just delivering growth and delivering at a brief, but like meaningful relationship with clients and sustainable growth rather than sort of one-off. And that fits the future is a really helpful thing that I said it's sort of was ingrained in Hearts from day one, and as a part of that from day one. But as a CEO, almost just gave me that sort of platform to go, right, well, let's really lean in hard to this fit for the future as, let's build this business plan that does this. And I should say that before I was CEO, like we'd done a fantastic, like Hearts had a fantastic kind of run of it. We were about 5 years old at that time. And we were about 120 million in billings and about 70 people. So like by any standard, 5 years in that trajectory is pretty good. But then I said like the key was just how do we lean even harder into that fit for future mindset. And the ambitious growth plan was just all about, at its core was really, really thinking about finding the right clients that really leaned into that fit for future mindset. So they were either at a crossroads, or they were of a mindset, or their business plan was such that they really wanted to win today and tomorrow rather than just simply win today. And I think that's a really, really big point of difference. And early in 2023, then when I started to kind of implement the plan, we won Jaguar and Allwyn on a global basis, and anyone who's been close to the Jaguar and Allwyn business knows how much of an ambitious pivot they have been on. And, the Jaguar branding recently is a very kind of recent chapter of that, right?
Definitely a big rebrand, probably the most notable of last year.
Yeah, so it's a real demonstrable, like that's obviously been externally facing, but that sort of ambition to that ambitious to transform is very much at the heart of the business. And then later in the year, we won the biggest pitch of the year in Allwyn in 2023. The new license holder, the first time the National Lottery has changed licensee. And that was all, again, built around a business that had a really exciting, bold vision for the National Lottery. And again, those two examples, those two wins obviously set us up for success in a big way, but they were both at this heart, really kind of a fit. It was a perfect marriage of our fit for the future mission and what they wanted to do as a business. So you did ask about KPIs and sort of defining success. And I think obviously in year one, winning those businesses was a really important KPI. But actually what we did was we wrote a 2-year KPIs as well, or the success. So we defined success in 2024, but also 2023, obviously. And actually what was really interesting and I think was ultimately really paid off was that we wrote some KPIs almost around all the pitfalls or risks that you would have. So if you were the fastest growing agency, which we were in 23, what's the problems or the risks that you potentially face in 2024? And so, pitch promises go awry when the rubber hits the road, or incumbent client relationships start to suffer because you've had an influx of all these new clients, or your talent starts to get really stretched, or you stop investing in your talent and they churn out, or you hire poorly, for example. Media partners as well. You get to a point whereby you're just trying to keep your head above water and do the work rather than do great work and build really great partnerships. But because actually in 2024, all of our KPIs or most of our KPIs were all geared across, we used the pitfalls to write the success metrics. It meant we stayed really, really focused this year, or sorry, I'm still in early 2025. 2024, we stayed really focused on those, and we delivered on that as well. So I think that was a really important game changer of success over the 2-year period, rather than just sort of winning big and then taking it from there.
Yeah, I feel like it's an interesting challenge of scaling, right? The more big clients you take on, as you mentioned, all of those concerns around whether or not it's talent, whether or not it's stretching people thin, trying to maintain a truthfulness as well to the sort of, as you sort of said, a future first mentality. That must be a challenge as you take on, especially bigger clients that clearly share that vision, but I'm sure also have other needs that they might be looking to cover in their media. No?
Yeah, well, specifically in terms of clients and scaling, yeah, I think it's a really important one. And I think getting that balance right of the today and the tomorrow is really important. And we monitor, I think most agencies or service industries anyway, most people have their sort of TRR, net promoter score that they do among their clients, and we're no different. So, we have our regular survey that we ask in terms of recommending Hearts to a friend or colleague. And we do pretty well in that. Last year we did pretty well in that. But obviously going back to my point about KPIs, that was one that we actually split it with the new clients and incumbent clients and made sure that both were good. It wasn't like, it wasn't that the new clients were getting anything better than the incumbent clients. And actually our incumbent clients were even happier than our than our new clients, which is something that we're really proud of, as I said, particularly in that year too. But actually, the other thing that we did, and in reference to your question around balancing the today and the tomorrow and the needs as we grew, we also introduced another KPI of not just about the here and now Net Promoter Score, but also effectively Net Promoter Score for the future. So I can't remember the exact language of it, but it's effectively how confident are you that Hearts is set up to service you in the future, not just today. And actually that last year, we had a higher score for the future among our clients than today. And the today score was good. It's not that the today score was bad, but actually, from what we hear, that's quite rare. But I think, again, it's a really testament to with our clients and how brave and bold and transformative they are. Actually, they're more than capable of having both those conversations together.
Looking into the future yourself, 2025, what would you say is the biggest challenge facing agencies more generally? Not just Hearts, but any agency that's trying to do some ideally, disruptive work like you are, but even more traditional agencies as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, because you mentioned about kind of you talked about kind of trying to do disruptive work and trying to be disruptive, and I think that's a really interesting kind of thread to pull on, because our industry, whether it's marketing or media or even the wider world, it's never been as disruptive and complex and fast moving and all those things. So I think for us, what's been a really important focus for us in terms of being fit for the future and a disruptor is, of course, you have to invest in creating disruption yourself. Now, whether that's investing in, of course, we invest in data and technology, and AI everyone's talking about AI, even like this, depending on when this goes out. But this morning, the Prime Minister was talking about investing in government services in terms of AI, right? So it's on everyone's lips. But we invested in about 5 years ago, that we built an AI-powered effectiveness tool called the Media Optimizer that sits at the heart of our effective suite today. So we invest in, you have to create your own disruption, of course, and invest in these things. It also helps, obviously, we're part of OMG, but it's a real benefit for Hearts. Even though we're kind of an agile, fast-paced challenger brand, we obviously are backed by OMG and their investment, among other things, into Omni, the global operating platform that everyone at Hearts has access to. It's a world-leading, services the whole of Omnicom globally. Again, that's really helpful to be disruptive too, because you're kind of giving yourself this unbelievable toolkit, and everyone in the agency has access to that. So that creates a lot of disruption as well. I think probably one of the things, though, I'd say in terms of disruption, though, is in such an innovative and disruptive, naturally, world or category, there's plenty of disruption anyway. So of course we have to invest in a bit of disruption. That's a good thing. When our clients need a new solution and there's nothing that serves them sufficiently, then we have to disrupt. But actually, I think certainly from speaking from a Hearts perspective, while it's great to create those things, there's also an element of just being really open-minded and almost a bit of humility. Like, you don't need to invent. Everything doesn't need to be invented by you. Media partners and clients are very well versed in innovation and disruption themselves. So actually, if you go into it, being a successful disruptor, it's as much about normalizing all those new things and practically applying them quickly to a client brief or today's problems or opportunities to grow, as it is being a source of it yourself. So I think even if you're not blessed, or anyone out there is not blessed with a really good, they're an Omnicom equivalent that can invest in this amazing platform, or has a data engineering and data scientist team that can create MPD. Actually, there's a lot of like riding the waves of disruption and being open to that. You can still be an incredibly successful disruptor.
We're recording this only 2 weeks into the new year, and there already has been a lot of disruptions in media and advertising just in these 2 weeks. For one, and I should mention this happened before the new year, but there is a forthcoming merger between your parent Omnicom, as you mentioned, and IPG that was revealed at the tail end of last year. I'm aware this is subject to regulatory intervention. I'm sure details are getting worked out behind closed doors at the moment at group level. I'm just curious, from your perspective, did you have any initial reaction to that merger? And if so, what did you communicate to staff essentially?
Yeah, look, I think this, as you said, there's not a lot I can say on the subject for lots of reasons, regulatory most notable among them. But the acquisition that's on the table, it's a potentially very exciting development if it all goes well on it with it being approved. In the meantime, though, in terms of Hearts, I'm sure the same would be from all of the different agencies. We have our growth plan that's in place, and we're very excited about delivering it. So, in the meantime, I think the communication to everybody was this is something that's really exciting and potentially huge news for the industry, let alone Omnicom or Hearts. But actually, we have a really exciting business plan that's in place already, and we actually going to implement that. And then anything that comes down the line there is potentially a very exciting additions back.
This episode of the Media Leader podcast is brought to you by TiVo OS, the content-first independent smart TV operating system that's bringing new monetization opportunities to market. Find out more at TiVo.com. The second big shift underway this year seems to be, if I can sort of editorialize a little bit, changes in working standards. Meta and Amazon axed their DEI programs just last week. Publicis Group has made reductions to its DEI staff. WPP is mandating employees come into the office more, moving away from the sort of 3-day-a-week hybrid model to a 4-day-a-week semi-hybrid model. I mean, I guess it's still hybrid, but that's being in the office a lot more. I'm curious how you've made sense as an agency leader of some of these initial changes. I mean, in Meta and Amazon's case, it seems like there's a political element to it pretty clearly as well. Especially when you talk about talent and the importance of, creating disruptors within your teams and making sure that, people, you're getting the best talent available to you to serve your clients. How do you view some of those changes that have sort of happened just in the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, look, I think at Omnicom and specifically speaking from a Hearts perspective, what we've always tried to do is to try to make sure that we're as flexible as possible. And I think it's a great legacy of the changes that happened that were forced upon everybody in COVID. But actually, there's a really good flexible working policy anyway. But even if you went back to 4 days or what have you, there's still going to be flexible days that people can start and finish their days, etc. So, because it's a really good acknowledgement that people have very important things and commitments outside of work. But equally, also to get the best of the people, it's not necessarily that's not a uniform. Those conditions aren't uniform either. So, irrespective of what's going on or what the future holds, I can't see that going anywhere at all. I think the only other acknowledgement that is coming through is the fact that actually one of our superpowers as an agency is we do things really well together. One of our agency values is about loving collaboration, and it's better when you're physically with someone. Collaboration is a lot easier when you're physically with someone on the majority of tasks that you've got, unless you're in a very specific. There are specific exceptions to that, but so we just need to get the balance right between getting the most out of our people and making sure that they feel connected. Because that's a really huge motivator for our industry, let alone at Hearts as well. That actually people join. You going back to your original question right at the start, I sort of talked glibly about falling into it, but the reason why I fell in love with it was that actually I'm really excited about being a part of the team and being a part of a culture. And that's what's made me love it. That's what's made me stay in it. And that's what's definitely contributed to anything good I've done in my career has been because I've been a part of a fantastic team and I've been able to be a part of that. So to deprive people of that because of it doesn't feels as unfair.
Is there any response you've gotten or reaction from clients with regard to some of the changes that some of the large platforms have made in the early days of this year? Is there demand, for instance, for clients to say, actually, we want to make sure we remain steadfast in our commitments to, say, supporting DEI practices, if not at an agency level, then with the types of media that we're spending on? Has there been any reactions? I'm thinking especially in relation to something like Meta.
Yeah. To be honest, it's too early to say because as we're recording now, that's sort of very, very new information. But what I can say is before Meta, before those any recent announcements on that, clients have been very supportive of all of our D&I efforts. Deciding the evidence that it makes for a better, more profitable, more successful business the more diverse your thinking is, and therefore by extension more diverse and equitable and inclusive your businesses as well. So clients have all been supportive of that. The new news on that has come out more recently, we haven't properly managed to understand what clients' reactions to that yet.
Sure. Something that Hearts and Science in particular has emphasized a lot is this idea of category entry points. And we've had Simon Carr, who's your chief strategy officer, write for us about this, speak at our events as well. And so I'd direct our listeners to, if you're interested in that media strategy, to go check out his work on the Media Leader as well. But I'm curious as well, from your perspective, why has this been a major focus? And do you feel it provides a point of difference to some of your agency competitors?
I mean, I can only echo Jack. If any of the listeners do want to hear more about category entry points, definitely seek out Simon Carr's, because he'll have done a very much better job than I'm about to in terms of unpacking exactly what category entry points are. But no, I think it's one that I remember really vividly being at the IPA when Baron Sharp was sort of invited into the IPA to launch How Brands Grow, the original one. And I'm kind of showing my age, but I think that's over 10 years ago. But it was sort of an audience with Baron Sharp to go through the book and some of the themes of the book, etc. And then people could kind of query him on it. And so I remember it so vividly because I remember it was a really sort of provocative evening, if you like. You know, it felt like it was quite a big thing that was really going to quite kind of change marketing and media from that moment. And actually, you know, you have that feeling and it doesn't always transpire, but this is one that it really did. And it's now become, How Brands Grow is now on the bookshelf of the majority of marketers out there, etc. It's become a real Bible for marketing. And then for people who don't know How Brands Grow, category entry points sits right at the heart of it. It's sort of a lens that you can apply, that you can concentrate your efforts in media and marketing in order to drive business growth. And that theory of that book, what we felt was that the theory of that book was really widespread and quite well known. But we felt that after, over 10 years of it being around, that there was still like plenty of room for more practical application of it, and critically practical application that was created competitive advantage, because the classic, if everyone follows the same rules that's in a book, everyone just neutralizes each other. So how do we actually make it even more applicable, but even more personal to our clients' challenges, or personal to the customers that they want to win, or personal to the category that they're operating in as well? So we sort of had that niggle that we thought there was so much more that we could do with that fantastic body of empirical evidence and the theory of it. So we went back to the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, which obviously is associated with Baron Sharp, and we created our own category entry points tool, which for any brand or category identifies the most important category entry points. And there's a few interesting things in that. So we went further to show that you were able to show which category entry points have more or less potential to drive growth from the brands. We're also able to show how the brands specifically performed against their competitive set. And we're even able to cut it for different audiences. So we're able to say this category entry point is good for this younger audience, let's say, and this older audience, this is more important. And actually this client, this competitor is beating you specifically against that category entry point versus the other competitor. You need to be worried about that category point. So it just gives us a really, really rich nuance and a really kind of rich, malleable insights engine that clients come to us with their hypotheses or their challenges and what have you, and we're able just to really get under the skin of it and go, well, actually, we think you're losing here or winning here. And again, things like it's great for prioritization, how considerations is a really slow moving metric. Whereas actually, if we're able to start to go, well, actually, let's grow mental availability and this specific category entry point against this competitor, that's going to move much quicker. And then as it is a future indicator of consideration growth as well. So it's just a really helpful prioritization tool. And it's been rolled out it's been really successful. It's been rolled out across all of our clients. Like Allwyn, for example, use it. And again, as a widespread, very, very, national treasure brand that touches pretty much everybody in some shape or form, with all their different games and all their different ways to play, it's just a really, really useful tool for us to kind of get into like really creating competitive advantage in media plans.
Are there any general takeaways, or is it really just brand specific and you really just drill down? Or are there takeaways to say actually a certain category entry points might work better in a general sense?
The answer to that is it really depends on the category. I think what we've done for 10 years is actually try to do a kind of a broad brushstrokes on more weeks on air and telly is good, all light users is good. And that's not wrong, but actually that's where you get to quite, I think we find that you could start to get to quite broad brushstrokes media plans. And that's good up to a point. But if all your competitors set are doing the same, reading the same books and doing the same things, then all your media plans are starting to look pretty similar too. So But this, you really have to get under the skin of that. And that's when you start to get some really interesting kind of unique and effective media ideas.
In terms of looking forward, I think a lot of the criticism you might read or see on media agencies more generally is there's a concern that there's a lot of brands, especially smaller businesses, that can do all their work through tech platforms. Increasingly so, this is largely AI models, etc. What would you say to a brand out there that's maybe considering leaning more in-house or taking on more of that type of responsibility for themselves as opposed to working alongside an agency for help? I mean, how would you address that criticism?
It's a good question to be asking for a start, because I think there are many different ways that we can deliver out our services and you can deliver marketing in more general terms if you're in a client role. Having a critical look at the setup and your operating model, I think is a good thing. So we sort of always welcome clients to say, well, is this the right model? It was the right model last year, but this is the right model here. And I think that's something that I think we've got much better. I know we have at Omnicom and Hearts particularly, is we've got much better at being much more fluid in terms of agile models, operating models. That is, we work with a number of clients who spend a lot on PPC and have quite, brilliant in-house PPC teams. But what's really interesting is that in embracing, like almost accepting that, rather than in the past maybe trying to, either ignoring it then or trying to work to get it into the agency, in embracing that is the right model for that client, what we're actually being able to do is wrap around incremental services around that. So if we built proprietary tech for the clients that we do run their PPC, actually can we rent that to those in-house teams to augment it? And I think there's a really good, what we're seeing among our clients anyway, is that there's a really good culture of keeping their in-house centers of excellence excellent. It's like, actually, how can we make sure that everyone's on top of their game, and how can you help? How can you augment what the in-house teams are doing? And I think that's in answer to your question, I don't think it's an either or. It changes all the time. And actually, I think both client and the agencies have got much more open. It's less about, well, it's in or out of scope. It's actually the boundaries are blurred on that, and that's a good thing.
Only have time for one more question. We're still early days in 2025. I'm curious, do you have a prediction? If you could name one prediction for what you think will happen in 2025. We've talked a little bit about uncertainties of the future, and it's hard to plan more than it seems like a couple of weeks ahead. But your whole job is really planning months ahead into the rest of the year. I mean, that's part of the media planning process, right? So, what do you expect from 2025.
I mean, I'd love it, Jack, if it was just months in advance. Sadly, I think it's
years.
I have to even think even more than that. Yeah, that's weird. But yeah, look, I think it's a really good question, and it's one that we ask a lot, and that's the right thing to do. But I think the way I usually, when asking about what's the future hold, or what's the future trends, or what's going to be big this year, next year, 5 years, what have you, I think I always come back to the way that you future-proof yourself today is thinking about things that really, really matter today, and then thinking about, will they matter tomorrow? Will they matter in 5 years? And stay focused on what are the persistent things that matter. Now, how you do it and what it looks like, etc., obviously will change, but that I think always helps me, and certainly decide on what's the flash in the pans, new things, and then what are the things that actually are going to persist. And I think using that approach is, I think, the journey that we've been on as an industry. We talked about it earlier, but I don't see, in spite of the latest news, I don't think we still need to continue on the D&I journey for sure. I think there's been some good stuff, but there's still always room for improvement. Like, we still need to attract new talent from all over the UK, all backgrounds, all other industries. Like, we just need to be better at that, without a doubt. And I think people like Brim, I think the work they've done is amazing. Like, Omnicom have been a partner of them, and I'm now they're doing second sponsorship program, and I'm a part of that, and that's great. And loads of other, it's not just Omnicom this time, there's loads of other agencies like that. Brilliant. That really underlines how important that we're taking it as an industry, and that's going to persist. Like, I mean, that has to say. And I think it keys into a wider point around responsible marketing. Like, I think that just will, again, that's just going to be even more important moving forward, like supporting and championing responsible marketing. And there's so many dimensions to that. I think that's almost the problem. There's so many different fronts to fight that on, and we have to fight on all of them, whether it's environmental or as against DEIB or responsible trading or respecting audiences' privacy. There's so many fronts on that, but they're all important. We can't neglect any of them. And things like OMG's ESG impact tool is really helpful for that, to kind of make sure that the media supply chain is working as hard as it can. But I think that's where the Fit for the Future really helps as well. Going back to that, it's like responsible is an imperative being fit for the future, because it just pulls you away from the bad practices that help today, but might not work tomorrow. We're always thinking about, well, how do we do it right today so that the same thing that we do will still work tomorrow? And I think that's really important. So I think responsible marketing is one that I think, can I go with that as a broad?
Yeah, it's a great answer
to your question.
Responsible is fit for the future, I think, is a fantastic takeaway. Garrett, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me, Jack. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to the Media Leader Podcast. Our executive producer is me, Jack Benjamin. Special thanks to our production partner, Trisonic. You can find all our episodes wherever you get your podcasts or on our website at themedialeader.co.uk. But do please remember to subscribe to be notified when we release our next episode. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at The Media Leader to receive daily coverage of all the biggest stories in media and advertising. From all of us at The Media Leader, I'm Jack Benjamin. See you next time.